Hi, this is Fergie Jenkins, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Jim on
To your
Base
favorite
Show.
athletes and entertainers. And I want to give a huge shout out to my friends at Claim to Fame. They have some of the best jackets out there that I love to wear. You can rock them for date night, a casual outing with friends, or even while doing a podcast. They're lightweight, they're durable, and perfect for any setting. My favorites are the dark blue, the olive shade, and if you want to switch things up and go for a lighter color, one of my favorite go-tos is the Pacific blue. So check them out at claimtofame.com for all their different styles. So make sure you click the link so the next time you step out, you'll be feeling good with Claim to Fame. Welcome back to another episode of the Jim on Base Show. For today's very special guest, we have on an MLB Hall of Famer, a Cy Young Award winner, a 3-time All-Star. He won 20 games 7 different times, and he also has his own foundation we're going to talk about. Please welcome the great Fergie Jenkins. Fergie, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to have you on the show. And just curious, where are you at these days? Are you in Chicago? I know you're from Canada.
I'm outside of a little town in Peoria, Illinois, near Kickapoo, deer hunting with a couple of buddies of mine.
Nice.
We've been trying hard to shoot some whitetails, but it's been raining the last 3 days. Today was kind of dry, but really nothing showed. So we're waiting for the rut to start probably in about 2 or 3 days.
Nice. So that sounds fun. I saw some dogs in the background too. Do you have some dogs with you, or?
I own a Rottweiler and a Lab. We brought them together with our mobile home, the wife and I, and they get upset from time to time because they want a lot of attention. As of right now, I've had them in some pens.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it sounds like a good trip. And are you a big hunter then, I imagine, or?
I like to hunt whitetail, and I've hunted elk when I lived in Oklahoma, and also when I lived in Arizona. But I still like the whitetail deer hunt.
Okay, nice. And I feel like you're a busy guy. I know you get around. You're at different events through the year. So, what kind of hobbies do you like to do in your free time besides hunting? Anything else, or?
Well, since the season's over, I was watching the World Series. The best team won,
Yeah.
and I try to stay busy doing that. I still work for the ball club, the
So
Cubs.
you're a fixture
So
at
that's
Wrigley Field a lot.
an
Then,
important part of what I do during the summer. It's fun to get back from time to time. We had a lot of ceremonies this year. The guys went into the Cub Hall of Fame, so that was fun to do. And I stay busy seeing Billy Williams and Andre Dawson, a few of the guys, Jim Sundberg. Right now Lee Smith is recovering from heart surgery, so it'll fun seeing him come spring training when he's able to be available and
one thing I
be
want to
back
talk
on
about
his feet
too is
again.
you have your foundation. Nice. Yeah, and, I know you have different events through the year, and you raise money for I think over 400 different organizations, right?
The organization, the foundation has been real popular for the last 20, 25 years. Special Olympics, especially in Canada and the U.S. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Make-A-Wish. But we try to do certain charities that are really important to a lot of people in the world today because of the fact that so many things that are happening that you try to keep up with a lot of these things. But the nice thing about it is some of the charities we work with really do help a lot of good people.
Right? So how's the golf swing?
Yeah, the golf outings were really good. That's where we try to raise a lot of money primarily through those to help, like I say, Special Olympics, Make-A-Wish, those types of different charities. And the golf is the number one thing when we bring celebrities in to play. We expect a lot of people to want to play with a certain Hall of Famer or a celebrity that could have been in basketball, hockey, baseball, football. So those are the kind of individuals we try to invite to make the charity work.
And it looks like, is that during March, like in spring training, so when everyone's kind of in a concentrated area?
A lot of times we have that just before spring training, as you said, in March. We do another one in June. We used to do 3. Now we're, because of the fact that it's really, really tough to do 3 outings, we try to do just the 2.
Oh, okay, nice. Well, I am curious too. Like, I like to get to know the guests, like where they're from, what it was like growing up. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but is it Chatham, Ontario, Canada? Is that how you say it, or?
About 60 miles north of Detroit. It's a little town right outside of pronounced
Okay.
Chatham,
Chatham.
Ontario.
I noticed they've produced a lot of good NHL players and even a fellow baseballer.
Yeah, Billy Atkinson was raised there. Doug Melvin, who was the general manager with a couple of different ball clubs, Milwaukee and the Texas Rangers. A lot of NHL hockey players have come from our small town. Also, Olympic figure skaters.
Okay.
So it's been a real popular community for athletes. And when I look back, I was one of the first to leave. Billy signed, and so Doug Melvin, and a lot of CFL football players have been participants from the Chatham area. I'm not sure. A lot of people think it's the water. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting too because your initial childhood dream was to be a hockey player, right?
Yeah, originally signed with the Phillies. I think Doug Melvin was Pittsburgh. Billy Atkinson was Montreal. So we've had a lot of different organizations. Detroit was a big team that scouted in my area, but Detroit didn't sign anybody. So, but a lot of these other teams have been visiting my town, and we're hoping that they continue to come. Now they got 30 major league ball clubs. A lot of scouting.
I heard he was a good chef. So can you throw it down the kitchen? Well, one thing I thought was interesting too was your dad.
And he's a Yeah, my dad. I guess you call it a self-learned chef.
Okay.
I played in the Negro League, traveled all through Southern Ontario, a lot of New York State's playing, and in Michigan playing baseball. But when he decided to retire from baseball, he wanted to really get into the kitchen. And as I said, he self-learned chef, did a lot of different hotels, the William Pitt Hotel in Chatham, Holiday Inn, cooked for the service clubs, the police club. I think the last job he had was with the Lighthouse, which was a little town near Tilbury, Ontario. Yeah, for sure.
So you were eating good as a young athlete. Curious, being a young athlete, a sports fan, I imagine growing up, who were your favorite teams and players?
Well, a lot of my favorite baseball teams were the Tigers in Cleveland because they're so close to Chatham. Hockey was Montreal and also the Detroit Red Wings.
Okay.
So there were like four teams I really enhanced looking at as a young age. Enjoyed watching those particular athletes play those different cities.
And I thought it was interesting too. I read that you played a few seasons for the Harlem Globetrotters. So is that true? And how'd that all come about?
Yeah, I played 3 seasons with them: 67, wow. 8, and 9. I just got through winning 20 games in 1967, and Joe Enzavino was the marketing individual with the Globetrotters at the time. Their head office was in Chicago on Michigan Avenue, and he asked me if I was going to go home in the off season. Would I like to play a couple of dozen games for the Globetrotters? And I said, of course. I said I was a decent athlete playing basketball, and I worked out with the Globetrotters a couple of times when they had off days in Chicago. And then the tour started in October. They found out that I could fit right in. So I enjoyed those 3 off seasons, starting in October, ending in January. I think it kept me in pretty good shape running up and down the court. I played the third quarter each night, about 15 minutes, scored some hoops, had a lot of fun playing with Meadowlark and Curly Neal, Jackie Jackson, Meadowlark Lemon. Leon Hilliard. There were so many good players that played on that team when I was with the team.
Wow. So were you always a good basketball player, or did you have to kind of get your skills up to get on the Globetrotters?
Well, I played a lot of high school basketball, and I played for a team called the Cagers, which was semi-pro. Played with them during the summer months sometimes, and in the fall. The team that played pretty good basketball, traveling different cities in Ontario. And I think that helped me with my performances with the Trotters because there was so many things that you had to understand, the plays and what you wanted to do. And I think that really helped me with the
Well,
Globetrotters.
another thing I learned about you, thought that was a cool little tidbit there. Kind of finessed your aim and got some control. I guess, did you work like in a coal yard? Is that how you?
Well, I grew up. Chuck Cooper was a good friend of mine. He had me working for a produce company because I was a tall, skinny kid. He thought that picking up 50-pound bags of potatoes and different produce would help me build my shoulders up as a kid. And I think in some cases it did help. The other situation where it was mentioned, Terry's coal yard was right opposite where I lived. And I used to throw rocks and coal up this coal chute. That was a thing that got me in a lot of trouble
Yeah.
because we had a spur railroad line that ran almost a couple hundred yards from where I was living in Chatham on Colburn Street. And I would throw these rocks and coal up the coal chute, and it would freeze in the ice. So I did get in some trouble doing that. My dad would always tell me, sooner or later, somebody's going to find out that you're the one that's doing it, which they end up finding out.
That's funny. Well, when I have
What do you
baseball
remember
players
about
on,
that?
I
Were
always
you
think
nervous?
it's cool
Was
to ask
family
them
there?
about their major league debut. So September 10th, 1965.
Well, I got brought up, as you said, with the Phillies from Little Rock. Got a chance to relieve one of my heroes. Jim Bunning was on that ball club at the time, and Phillies were playing the Cardinals, and Bunning was opposed by the Cardinals and Bob Gibson. And I had a chance to pitch the last, I think, four and a half, maybe 5 innings against Gibby. Ended up winning the game in the 10th inning. Dick Allen led off with I think a single. Ricky Rojas drove him in. I think Dick stole second and he scored on a base hit. And I ended up winning my first Major League Ball club and beating the St. Louis Cardinals. First individual I phoned was my dad, and I had to tell him, say, hey, I just got through performing in pretty good. I think 4 1/3 innings against the Cardinals and end up winning a key ball game against the Cardinals, and Bob Gibson was the pitcher I faced.
Wow. Yeah, did you ever have to go up to the plate and face Bob Gibson? Because that would scare me a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Later on in my career, when I became a starter with the Cubs, I faced Gibson quite a bit. Also on the mound and hitting against him.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about it is I always like to play. And as a kid growing up, I thought I was a pretty good hitter. I'm not sure if I got any hits against him, but I know I had a chance to face him quite a few times. I think about over a dozen times we faced each other. So
wow. And I was
got a chance
was
to go
it
to the plate
pretty surreal
against
for you
him.
to walk into a clubhouse with Billy Williams, Ron Santo, Ernie Banks?
Getting traded was something that, every ball player has to go through that. And I got traded from the Phillies to the Cubs and got a chance to meet Ernie Banks and Santo and Williams. I think we had a young ball club because made a point of Mr. Wrigley telling him we need younger players on this ball club. Made a trade for Bill Hands and Randy Hundley. Kenny Holtzman was one of the younger ball players, along with Kessler, that was in the organization. The nice thing that when I look back, Leo gave us all an opportunity. Rich and I was in the organization, and Joe Negro gave us an opportunity to play. And I became a starter in that 67 season with Randy Hundley as my main catcher. And we end up not really playing really well at first season, 66, but played a lot better in 67. Kenny Holtzman was a good starter, Bill Hands, Rich Nye, and Joe Negro, myself. We had Ted Abernathy out of the bullpen and Phil Reagan. Wow. So when you look back at what Leo did as a manager, he turned that organization around.
Yeah, I was curious. What was it like playing for Leo Durocher? Because, as you know, he
Well,
managed the New York
Leo was
Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers. I bet he
an
had some good
innovator. He
stories.
was a tough manager. He wouldn't take any excuses. When you played for a manager of his stature, if you made mistakes, it's your fault. Don't blame somebody else. Don't blame the infield. They turned a double play or they didn't do it, or somebody missed a fly ball or didn't execute well. And he was a big fundamentalist.
Mm.
So when Leo took that ball club over, he knew what he was doing. And I was a starter for him for almost 7 years. And those 20 game seasons I had, he was the manager, and I enjoyed playing for him.
Well, I thought it was crazy too. One of your stats, in 1973 with the Rangers, you had 25
You know,
wins,
that
and you
74
still
season,
finished second in the
when I
Cy
got
Young
traded from
voting.
the Cubs to the Rangers, Billy Martin was the manager. And Billy Martin was similar to Leo DeRocher. These older managers, they see something in a player and they expect you to go ahead and excel at your position. And my position was to pitch. The DH was still real popular in the American League in Texas. Alex Johnson was the DH along with Jeff Burrows a lot of times, and I ended up pitching in. I think I've started like 40, 41 ball games. I ended up winning 25, tied with Catfish Hunter. Catfish ended up winning the Cy Younger that season, and I got the Comeback Player of the Year award.
Yeah, I thought it's crazy too because you got the comeback of the year award because you won 14 games the season before. And nowadays, if you win 14 games, you're almost considered an ace.
Guys are not baseball has changed a lot, especially in the management doesn't want them to do that. So if a pitcher goes out there and he throws from 60 to 80 pitches, if he hasn't completed 4 or 5 innings, he's out of the ball game. So you're hoping that you'll get it to the fifth inning, and if you're winning a ball game, you get credit from winning. But if you don't get that 5 innings in, you get a no decision. But it all started through I think Tony La Russa and Joe Torre of the bullpen being so popular. Mm-hmm. So if they've got an opportunity to put that bullpen in there in that situation in the ball game, you're not going to pitch 5-6 innings. So when I look back, I was fortunate enough to play in the right era. Yeah. Because the fact that I think that year with Billy Martin, I had 29 complete ball games.
Yeah.
So I had a chance to win a lot of ball games. And when I look back, 25 wins to me was my highest total ever as a major league pitcher.
Well, it's interesting. It made me wonder because a lot of those years that you played, you were on like a 4-man rotation, right? So when they went to the 5-man, were pitchers against it at first, or did you guys welcome it? What was your initial thought process on a 5-man rotation?
Because the fact that, as you said, a 5-man rotation basically told yourself and the organization you're going to basically pitch once a week, and you might only get 25 to 28 to maybe 30 starts, which if you are on your game, you can probably win 15 or 16 ball games, but 20 games might not be that total you could get to. The more starts you get, I think it's higher into the total, maybe 30, 35 starts, you have more of an opportunity to get to 20 games because a lot of no decisions are part of what you see in baseball nowadays.
Yeah. Well, since I'm from the Bay Area and I grew up a big Giants fan, I did have to ask you, do you have any special memories of facing, guys like Willie Mays, Willie McCovey? Orlando Cepeda, or maybe even dueling against like Juan Marichal?
Well, you mentioned 3 real tough ball players.
Yeah.
Mays, McCovey, and Cepeda. They were, I think, I'm trying to think of the third baseman they had. They had Davenport there too, and a few other players. But they were tough individuals, especially Candlestick Park. The wind blowed to right field, so you had to be real careful with McCovey, especially in Cepeda, hit the ball to right and right center. Mays was a pull hitter. I know I gave up some line drives, and they just didn't carry in Candlestick Park. And Billy Williams playing left field, he'd walk in and catch a fly ball didn't get to the warning track. But I think that that ballpark was tough to pitch in. I faced Gaylord Perry as a competitor along with Mon Marichal. There were a lot of good players. I had Bob Shaw was another pitcher that I had a chance to pitch against. But when you look back, that ballpark, if you didn't understand the elements in that particular stadium, you weren't going to win a lot of ball games. So I was very fortunate enough not to give up a lot of home runs, especially to right field.
The great
with
Tony
Cepeda and probably
I got to speak with
McCovey.
him the other day. I was at the final event at the Oakland Coliseum. It was put on by Reggie Jackson. So, as you know, Tony went on to be a great Bay Area name and manager.
Yeah, I think that early in my career,
And he was
I think he had signed with the Cubs, Tony La Russa. And I'm not sure if he played a whole lot with the Cub organization. When I came up, I think he had been sent to the minor leagues, and he didn't play long in the minors and became a manager. But he was one of the players that understood as a manager, the bullpen was going to be popular. He had Eckersley out there in Oakland and a couple other good relief pitchers. So he knew that if the game was going to be won, the bullpen might be the strongest part of the game. And I think that ended up being that he was one of the first, him and Joe Torre, knowing that that if you didn't have a strong bullpen, you weren't going to win ball games.
Well, is there anyone in particular that you think back onto your career? Like I had Brett Saberhagen on the other day, and he said one of the toughest hitters he had to face was Wade Boggs. So is there anyone that you knew, like, all right, I got to really bring it for this at bat that you enjoyed competing against?
In the 60s and the 70s, you're looking at probably Clemente, a dozen pretty good hitters. Pete Rose. Oh, geez. Dick Allen. I mean, there were so many really good players, especially in the National League, that Joe Torre was another good hitter, Rico Cardi. And then I got traded to the American League. You're looking at Rod Carew, Al Kaline, Armin Killebrew.
Oh, wow.
There were Jim Gentile, Norm Cash. There were some guys that just you were going to have your problems getting these guys out. I had a chance to in the spring training to face Mickey Mantle.
Wow.
And I faced him in all-star competition. And another guy that when you look back, Roger Maris got traded to the Cardinals with Cepeda in 1968. And they had a pretty good ball club in 68 with the Cardinals when they ended up winning that division.
Yeah.
So Roger Maris was a tough out. One guy or two guys that I should mention to give them their own. The third base, they were tough. With Hank Aaron was tough. Man, he slips my mind right now. The Atlanta team. Eddie Matthews. Oh, jeez. Eddie, because of the fact that he was left-handed and hitting Wrigley Field, Eddie Matthews was a tough out. Houston. Another guy he got traded to the Mets. Rusty Staub. So there were guys that you just had to be real careful with, knowing that they were guys that are going to drive in runs, hit home runs, and knowing that you and the catcher, Randy Hundley, we had to basically understand these guys were out there to beat you. So you had to be real tough with certain pitches. And if I was going to be successful, not to make mistakes against dozen or so real good hitters in the National League and the American League.
No easy days.
No, you're right. No easy days.
Well, I thought one of the cooler stats that you have is you, Greg Maddux, Curt Schilling, Pedro Martinez, only pitchers to have 3,000 strikeouts with less than 1,000 walks. So I was curious, do you have like a favorite
pitching
stat
in that era, as you said, cutting your walks down, having your strikeouts a little higher than walks. I think 1 year I led, or maybe 2 years, I led the league in strikeouts in the 70s. And as you mentioned, uh, having 3,000 strikeouts, less than 1,000 honor. Walks. Maddox did it. Stat that Schilling, Martinez, myself. Pitchers really don't get to the point where they think it's important. Walks, strikeouts, innings pitched. When I look back, I pitched almost 4,500 innings in my 18-year, almost 19-year career, and keeping those walks and strikeouts to a minimum. Less walks, more strikeouts. I think that's very important as a pitcher. I think it tells management and your manager that they're proud to put you out there, and they understand that if you do a good job, they're gonna see some good results.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good point. But I thought maybe your favorite stat would be the fact that you hit 13 home runs.
Well, hitting home runs is important too as a pitcher, but you have to make sure the other pitcher makes a mistake that gives you a nice high fastball or a hanging curveball. You got a chance to maybe do some damage. I hit, I think, 5 or 6 at Wrigley Field. I think the rest of them I hit them on the road. I hit a couple in Pittsburgh. I think I hit one in New York off Tom Seaver.
Wow, that's pretty.
So
good.
He hung a curveball, and so the end result. A lot of times, you make a good swing on a certain pitch, you hit it a long way. So I look back, I was pretty lucky in that
years.
Respect.
Obviously, you played at Wrigley. Well, speaking of home runs, Park, I thought it was pretty interesting with you. An impressive hitter-friendly stadiums and very historic.
When you think about it, pitching and you throw a lot of innings in a season, 300 innings or 290, and you don't give up a lot of home runs. That's very important. And as you said, my dog is a problem right here.
Can you get the Rottweiler?
Bother me? She's bothering me right now. Because of the fact that if you can pitch quite a few innings and being a starting pitcher in Fenway or even the old ballpark in Texas, Turnpike Stadium was a home run ballpark for certain people. So keeping those home runs down can reassure you maybe completing a ball game, giving up less runs, and especially that long ball, which is always a problem sometimes with pitchers, and especially if you pitch a lot of innings. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that they give up a lot of home runs.
Obviously, when you're at home, all the games were day games. So did you ever have to kind of acclimate?
Well, my career with the Cubs was all day baseball. The 10 years as a pitcher. The ball jumps at certain times, and the Cubs that ballpark is right off, Lake Michigan. It's only like 7 or 8 blocks, and there's a wind factor. The wind blows in a little bit in April, and the rest of the time it blows across or out. May, June, July, and August. So the wind's a big factor, especially at Wrigley Field. So you got to be real careful with certain hitters and certain pitches that you try to get the hitters out with. And I was a pitcher that threw a lot of strikes, had a pretty good slider, threw a lot of fastballs. So
I went to
you got to be very careful in Wrigley Field, especially with the wind blowing out.
My team, the Giants, played the Cubs, and I couldn't help but notice your statue out front. So is that pretty surreal for you to see that when you're in town?
Well, yes. I'm pretty proud of the fact that the 10 years I performed as a pitcher. They retired my number in May of 2009. And then a couple of years ago, the new owner, Tom Ricketts, decided that he was going to put statues up and wanted to direct some more of some of the players. Ernie Banks was the first. Ryan Ken, Billy Williams, and Ron Santo. Infielder was the fourth, played, and now you're seeing basically 15, 16 years of his career right there at Wrigley Field. And Rhino was a hell of a second baseman. So I'm pretty proud of that fact that I'm along with those other players that remembered what I did as an athlete, to see myself as a statue there.
Yeah. Well, what did it mean for you to finish your career? Like your final 2 seasons were in Chicago.
Yes, I came back after I left the Texas
Did
Rangers.
that mean a lot to you?
Those
Or?
last 4 years of the Rangers in the '70s to come back and pitch with the Chicago Cubs. I'm pretty proud of the fact that putting on those pinstripes and playing with some great athletes. As I mentioned earlier, Ernie Banks and I were roommates. The last 3 years he played, 67, 8, and 9. Then he became a coach. But Ron Santo played almost 7 years behind me playing third base. I had Kessinger at short, Beckert at second. I had a lot of different first basemen. I had Ernie there. I had Joe Pepitone, Jim Hickman. I had also had an opportunity to play with Joe Pepitone when he came over in a trade. So, you know, some good athletes have put those pinstripes on and really played well. And I look back at without having a good catcher too. Randy Hundley caught me for well over 7 years and winning 20 games. He was one of those factors that he knew what pitches to call against certain hitters, and we had some success.
Well, I had to sleep in the car the other day. I was on a road trip, and the guy next to me was snoring the whole time. So I had to literally sleep outside. It was so bad. So it made me wonder, when you have roommates and you're paired up, are there any bad snores through the years, or how do you deal with that?
Well, roommates are very important. Ernie Banks was my Byron Brown was my first roommate with the Cubs that first year, '66, and then I had roommates with Ernie Banks for 3 seasons. When I got traded, Jim Bibby and I were roommates in Texas, and when I was in Boston, Dwight Evans and I were roommates.
uh,
So when you look back at playing with certain teams, roommates are very important. You get along with certain guys. The clubhouses are so important. The harmony you see on the field is what you see off the field. So
hmm.
the guys really got along well together, and that's the reason why you have a lot of success winning ball games.
Well, when you're a veteran or one of the good players, do you kind of get to pick who your roommate is, or do they assign it to you, or how did that work back then?
Well, roommates are assigned basically in spring training,
Hmm.
and a lot of times you do it on your own,
Oh,
or
okay.
the team does it. But uh, in my era, it was almost you and another individual. We got together because you had certain things that you liked in common. And the nice thing about it, when was roommate with Ernie, I was giving Ernie back, but he just talked baseball all the time. And I think that's a big factor. I'm 22, 23 years old, and he was a little older, but he loved to talk, and he knew
Whenever
the
I
game
have
of
a guest
baseball,
on,
and I was pretty happy to have him as a roommate.
yeah, I bet. I'm a big music fan. Who was your very first concert that you ever went to, or do you have any memorable concerts through the years?
Well, players have a theme when they come to the plate, and being a Canadian, they used to play the Canadian Sunset all the time for me. Uh, but my era is Motown,
Mm.
so I had an opportunity to see Diana Ross in Chicago, along with the Temptations, the Four Tops. On the road, you might see different groups, but Motown was big in those '60s and '70s when I grew up.
Nice. Well, that makes me think too. Do you have good pipes? Because I know you've sang the seventh inning stretch a few times at Wrigley over the years.
Well, I was raised a Baptist, and I
Mm.
sang in the choir as a kid in Canada. So singing was something that I enjoyed doing. And the seventh inning stretch, I tell people there's only four choruses that you have to remember, and you got to make sure you don't start singing too soon. But it's always a one, a two, a three. Take me out to the ball game. But that's the fun part. Harry Carey started all that, and they've had a ton of other athletes do it, and businessmen and movie stars. And I think that Wrigley Field is the one place that you hear the seventh inning stretch more than any other ballpark. So when I get a chance to do it, I enjoy myself doing it. I do it a
Yeah, do you
couple of
usually do it
times
once
in
a
Wrigley.
year, or is that kind
I've
of the
done it a
average?
couple of
Or
times in spring training
oh, okay,
at Sloan Field there in Mesa. So I mean, it's fun to do, and
yeah,
and I think the fans enjoy seeing you come out and be a part of that seventh inning And I always try to let the fans know that let's score some runs because we want the Cubs to win.
Yeah. Well, last thing on that, I've had Tom Dreesen on a few times. I think he's tied for the record of singing it. I'm sure you know Tom through the years.
Oh yeah, famous comedian there, raised in Wrigley, and he's a big Cub fan. So many guys that were part of that Chicago era are definitely Cub fans.
Yeah. Well, Fergie, I got to say it's been fun to meet you and catch up with you here. Thanks for giving me some time. Foundation and before we leave, is there anything?
Well, the biggest thing is that what I'm trying to do right now is to move it back to my hometown, Chatham, Ontario. Right now it's in St. Catharines. So I'm trying to move it back to Chatham. The statue's there. We're going to get a lot more memorabilia. And we're trying to find a legitimate place where we can put up a lot of the things that I had a chance to earn as a player, and probably have some more golf outings, local golf courses that are right there in my hometown. But I'm looking forward to that happening, and seeing a lot of different athletes to come to my hometown and perform and to support the different charities that I enjoy doing.
Awesome. Well, I'll put some links in the bio so people can check out the foundation. And last question then, what else is on the agenda today?
Well, tomorrow I had a chance to travel to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing a charity there at one of the casinos. I'll be doing that probably for like 4 or 5 hours. Trying to stay busy, fly back to Illinois and support a lot of these different charities, which I really enjoy doing. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, Fergie, thanks for coming on the show, and maybe I'll see you down the line.
Sounds good. And continue success, Fergie, with your show, Jim on Base. All right, you take care.